that needs a seat that doesn't have one. You folks that are standing, you can try to find a seat if you'd like. If you don't want to sit by those people because they look funny or smell bad, that's completely up to you. They shouldn't, because most of the people in here, I would say 95% are all Iowa State fans, which they're well above board. So, but anyway, let's get this thing started. And I'm Tim Davis. I'll be the host tonight. Flying solo again this evening, but my cohort is in the audience. My buddy Brock Bierman, who calls the games with us on the network. He's kind of got a little conflict of interest, but he is here in attendance because he is a die-hard Iowa State fan. If you haven't heard on any of the broadcasts, we try to always make sure we mention that. So, but anyway, we'll get this thing started. Before we get going with all of the interviews, which all of them, there's 2, by the way, so, and that's the reason you're here. But to give you an overview of how this thing started, we went to Matt and Mary Ann Pescia, who are the owners of Flight Bar and Grill. They're back there bartending right now, and they've put this all together. But we talked to them in July, Dan and Brock and I, and we said, hey, we would really like some sponsorship money for the network. And we knew when we asked them that it was kind of a tough ask because everything they've done for the foundation. So if you came in the front door, there was a huge check on the wall for just under $23,000. That's how much money that Flight Bar and Grill has donated to the Iowa Education Center in just 1 year, which is incredible. So we went and we thought, well, if they could give us a portion to kind of get us going, and then we were going to hit up some other folks. And we said we might want to do like a show, like a once a month or maybe weekly, some sort of talk show. And they said, okay. And then 3 weeks later, we meet, and Matt Marianne says, we'll do the whole year. We'll do the whole year. But here's what we want to do. We said, okay. And Dan looked at me, and I looked at Brock, and we're like, oh, bleep. Here it goes, right? Like, now we're getting serious. So we had our first show in August, and we had the superintendent, we had the principal on, some coaches, a guy from brewery down in Winterset. And I think we had like 33 people. We thought, man, that's pretty good. We're really killing it right now. We had our next show, and Dan and we said, well, we'd like to get more, so let's do tables, and we'll do corporate sponsors. And okay, so then Dan and I bought a table, and we had like 35 people. We said, all right, now we're really cooking. And so as we grew, we got Coach DeVries, we got Coach Mitchell, and then the last month, and now here we are. 75 people later, we've doubled from where we started. And when we started it, Matt said we want to throw jet fuel on it, which going with the flight theme is pretty great, right? So we've come a long ways as far as from number of people in the audience and our quality of guests. And our quality of guests have always been great, but it takes names and it takes people to come in here. As I see Brent and Jamie talking, like, wait, quality? Hold on. But there's a reason you're here, and it's definitely not to hear me talk. I'll ask the questions, but we're here to have an incredibly fun night. And these guys have been so gracious with their time, and people have said, well, how did it happen? How do you get these guys? Well, when we got Darren Freeze, I knew a guy that knew him, and I got his number, and I texted him, and he said, okay. And then, well, how'd you get Sam Peterson and Brody Breck? Well, Sam's from Huxley, and Brody and Sam play together, and there it is. Well, how'd you get Jamie Pollard, Brent Blum? Dan Aisler sent an email, and Jamie was gracious enough. He's great with his email. And I think at the timing, they always say timing in life is important. I think Jamie was just in the restaurant not too long before Dan emailed him. And so it was probably fresh in his mind. And he said, yeah, I can be there. And then it was like, holy bleep. The Iowa State Athletic Director's coming. And hey, we will. Do you want to get involved? Because Swarm was just here last month and they killed it. We will said, oh yeah, anything they can do, we can do better. And so here we are. And you can hoot and holler, you're Iowa State fans, and we're here to have a great time. Before we get going, though, I've got to say some thank yous. A special thanks to the Ames Lager folks. Joe from Westo Brewing is here in the building. Joe, if you want to raise your hand back there for anything. That's Joe. And if you've ever listened to a broadcast, and Brock can appreciate this, Joe would definitely be on the all-hair team there. He's got great hair. I love that hair. He got great hair. Another special thanks to the Iowa State Vodka and the Iowa Distilling Company I believe we've got Brooke and Kyle here. So if you guys want to raise your hands back there. I think they're making some special cocktails back there. They got some special cocktails. So if you want to check it out, go ahead and hit them up. Obviously, special thanks to the We Will Collective. We kind of tweeted at him, we did tweet at him. Crystal reached out, sent a direct message, and I believe her and Marianne communicated with some stuff because Marianne Pasha is great at marketing this place, and she's been great at marketing just this event. But Brent told me, he said, I keep Crystal around because she does like all of the stuff. And I said, oh, that's good. And he said, the only thing she doesn't do is make wooden benches. And I didn't know what that meant, but I think you people that know will know, and that would sound. But anyway, without further ado, our first guest is the head, the president, the big cheese of the We Will Collective, Mr. Brent Blum. Come on up and give him a big hand. Give him a big round of applause.
All the way over.
Yeah, all the way over. And so, folks, if this is your first time at a flyby, welcome, and hopefully it's not your last. What we do is we send the questions out to our guests, kind of usually a week or 4 to 5 days, so they know what's going on. Now, what we don't tell them until they get here in the building or even with the microphone is those questions, we're going to stick to them kinda. All right, so if we feel like we need to dive deeper or maybe take a little different look at it, we will. But Brent, first of all, thanks for coming, man.
Oh, my pleasure. What a great crowd. This is the best looking crowd I've ever seen in high school.
Look at this guy.
Yeah. And
this guy knows how to raise dollars with comments like that, right? So tell us, Brent, tell us about you, and then we'll get kind of into the We Will Collective. We want to know about Brent Blum.
Yeah, so I'm a Central Iowa guy, always been an Iowa Stater. So I grew up in West Des Moines. I was going to go to Dowling Catholic High School, but at the time, Dowling Catholic did not need 5'6" shooting guards that didn't play defense. Milwaukee High School did.
Okay.
So that has changed a little bit since then. But graduated from Milwaukee 2003, and then up to Iowa State, graduated 2007. And I knew at an early age that I wanted to be around athletics in some capacity, but clearly with genetics and lack of athleticism, that was going to be a problem to play. So I pursued a couple of things, but the biggest was broadcasting. So when I grew up, I would listen to the radio. So Eric Heft and Pete Taylor were a couple of my idols, the voices of the Cyclones. And when I get to some of these presentations, a lot of people don't realize when I was growing up in the late 90s and even up to 2001, only 4 of Iowa State's 11 football games were on television. So in order to follow Iowa State, you literally had to either go to the games or listen on the radio. And I, for some reason, just really enjoyed the art of broadcasting. So pursued broadcasting. And the way I would practice is I would turn down, Madden football or the college football video games and do the play-by-play myself.
Yeah.
And that was the best practice I could get to do it. So went to Iowa State, got involved with broadcasting on the student radio station, and then ultimately met John Walters, who I did an internship with. And John is like a second dad to me. He looked out of his way for me. He was incredible. Got an internship with John, and then that led to a job at the Cyclone Radio Network where I did the women's basketball games as a senior at Iowa State. So that kind of got me involved in the background. So my background is really in broadcasting first and foremost. And then I kind of fell into marketing and fundraising, and it's a whole other story about how we ended up in the collective. But outside of my family, Iowa State and Iowa State athletics specifically are my biggest passions. And so really I've kind of dedicated my professional life to helping Iowa State the best way we can.
Sure. And you brought some folks with you tonight.
I did. So I've got my lovely wife, Crystal, and my 2 boys, Everett and Theo, who Theo was really impressed to tell Jamie Pollard about his new car washing game. So
okay, there you go.
I'm sure Jamie's very impressed.
Yeah, he's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
So you kind of, Brent, you went, and I'm going to tell you right now, I apologize if I call you Scott, because
I've got an older brother named Scott.
Right, and I know Scott from a previous life. Scott's the superintendent at Dallas Center Grimes now, which is awesome for him, but I knew him when he was teaching at Waukee when I was there. So great dude, but I'm like, God, it's Brent. But anyway, you kind of touched on it. The next question was, how'd you first get involved in Cyclone athletics? And you told us with the broadcasting, and you didn't really touch. You said, well, it's a long story, but give us the Reader's Digest version or the Cliff Notes or whatever Ken Miller calls them in Canada the other day. I was listening on the radio, but he's like, it's some sort of notes, and it's Cliff Notes. But how'd you get involved as far as I mean, you're the guy for the We Will Collective, and we're going to get into that later, but how'd you get there?
Yeah, so I learned, so broadcasting was my job for the first 3 to 4 years. So I worked in Shenandoah, Iowa, any Southwest Iowans in the room? Anybody?
Yeah, we got one right
All
here.
right.
So I knew
Yeah, so
Dale Sandquist is from
Dale
down there.
Sandquist, absolutely. So I worked for KMA Radio for 6 months, and I was single at the time, and Shenandoah was great. I mean, it was an awesome job, really was. The
Great
sports
nightlife.
down there was no nightlife.
Okay, I know.
So I applied for literally every job out there I could. Ended up applying for the job with the Orlando Magic in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my cover letter, I want to be the next person to go from Iowa State to the Orlando Magic like Kelvin Cato. Now, Kelvin Cato was,
What a great segue.
was a very good player at Iowa State. I would say he was a bit player in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So the hiring manager gives me a call and says, hey, I don't normally talk to people from Iowa. Why would I? However, anybody that puts Kelvin Cato in a cover letter at least deserves a call back. And it worked.
Okay.
So they hired me there. I was down for 2 years. I was the lowest part of the broadcast department, and it was awesome. It was the greatest couple of years I had professionally because you learn 2 things. One, the hard work it takes to survive in athletics. But 2, even the professional athletes are just normal people at the end of the day. They have a lot more money, but mostly normal people. But I was in Florida. Florida wasn't exactly for me. Again, back to the nightlife thing. Wanted to meet somebody, raise a family, so moved back to Iowa and got hooked back up to Cyclone Radio Network, doing the football halftime, postgame, and helping out with the broadcast. But then realized that broadcasting, the compensation isn't always the best. And so I needed a day job. So I actually started in marketing and then ultimately fundraising at Des Moines University in development. And then I was at Des Moines University for about 5 years and got a call from the Iowa State Foundation. Some of my foundation friends are in the room. We got Sarah, we got Jamie.
Okay.
So they and I had an awesome time. So I was at the foundation, day job raising money for the Ivy College of Business, and then my hobby was doing the broadcasting on the side. And then ultimately that kind of led to this current position because one of the founding members of the We Will Collective, I did not found the We Will Collective, was Ryan Harklaw. And Ryan was our sideline reporter on the Cyclone Radio Network. And so the collective was really started in the spring of 2022, which feels like a long time ago. It wasn't that long ago. When Iowa State realized through a couple different groups, like, hey, if we don't participate in this collective NIL business, Iowa State could get left behind.
Yep.
And so there's a great group that started the We Will Collective. So Ryan Harklaw is a former football player. He's on the Cyclone Radio Network. Josh Rank, a former football player. Dan McCarney's a member of the board. George Niang. And then Jason Luch, who was a businessman in Ankeny, were kind of the founding members of the collective, all people that I had known and really liked. And so they kind of came to me and said, hey, we need somebody to just run the day-to-day of this thing. Because they had a website, they started to get some donations, but they just didn't have anybody do the follow-up and all the activity. And so I said I'd be interested, but I've got a really good gig at the Ivy College of Business with great state benefits, so what is this all about? And my wife's like, what is NIL? Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
But the cool story I like to tell is I went to another of my mentors, Dean David Spalding with the Ivy College of Business, and said, hey, David, I've got this opportunity. And he said, and it really changed my decision-making process. He said, Brent, for the good of Iowa State, you may not realize it, but you need to go do that. You'll always have a home back here in Ivy. Just basically saying, whether you like it or not, this thing isn't going away. We need somebody to run NIL. And so David was a big reason why he convinced me to do that. And then some great folks, some boosters and investors in our organization basically gave me a runway to make sure my wife was happy on the compensation front. But then it's just been really bootstraps and from the ground up from there. So great people that started it, people that only care about Iowa State more than anything else. And what I found in this NIL world is there's a lot of bad actors. And there's a lot of people trying to make a buck and take advantage of the system. And what I appreciate about what we have at Iowa State, it's we're all Cyclones going the same direction. Because honestly, if you don't go the same direction in this world, you're not going to make it. And thankfully, it's been a wild ride, literally a wild ride, but it's been a fun journey, and certainly grateful for even opportunities like this, because Iowa State fans have really rallied behind. Nobody loves it. I don't love it. There are days I go, what are we doing here? But it really is a way to keep things afloat until, like I say, the adults step in.
Sure. Explain to us, so board of directors, you talked about who's on it. What decisions do they make as far as we touch on the day-to-day for you, but
Yeah.
we'll come back to that. But as far as, obviously, you've got a board of directors, so what do they do and what is their purpose?
And I mean, really, all the decision making comes from them. So, the thing with NIL, and you hear some certain things in the news, but what our board determines, number one, is the budget for our NIL support. So we kind of looked at it as Iowa State. We've now grown to the point where we give NIL compensation to every single scholarship, football, men's basketball player, women's basketball player, every volleyball player now. And so we got to decide how do you allocate those funds. You're getting all these funds in. So my main job is fundraising, so getting the dollars in. But then I really lean on the board of, okay, then what do you do with that? How do you allocate it? Because where some schools can get really sideways, and why certainly great for our board and all the people at Iowa State, and Iowa State's not involved with any of the financial decisions. However, you could get the football coach arguing with the men's basketball coach, who's arguing with the women's basketball coach because, hey, what are we getting here?
Right.
And
We need this.
We
We
need this.
want that.
What about this? And so we've really had a deliberate and strategic approach of, okay, how do we split up the dollars we have? We don't have as many dollars as, I'd say the majority of our peers, but if we can be strategic in how we allocate them, that's what our board does. So they again, really smart business folks. And so how do you, again, maintain culture, maintain all the great things about Iowa State, but then also make great decisions and how you spend, because you can get in trouble really quickly if you spend resources the wrong way. And that's why I always have appreciated the way Jamie has approached things as a whole with Iowa State. And I would say the reason Iowa State is successful is because of Jamie. And so what we're trying to do at the collective is just be an additional and add-on situation for the entire Iowa State culture. We would not survive without the great partnership with the athletic department. And we are separate, don't get me wrong, but we are all going the same direction. That's the only way we can make it work. But yeah, so our board is very instrumental in decision-making, how sports resources get allocated, and maintaining those really good relationships with the coaching staffs is vital.
So you've touched on a lot of things, and you said, some days I'm like, what's the best part of your job? And we're going to follow that up with, or you can say, what's the worst part of your job? But either, however you want to approach it. But
it's the best part, and it's really not close, is the impact that this really has on the majority of student athletes in a positive way. I mean, I think you see the crazy stories, you see the millions of dollars, and honestly, that's not the case for the majority. In fact, 95% of these folks, it's not what you think it is. And I'll just give you a quick story of how this works in a really cool way. So Iowa State had a player on his football team, graduated last year, named Anthony Johnson. I'm sure everybody know Anthony now with the Packers. And so Anthony, if you know his story at all, he's an amazing, amazing kid. But Anthony grew up in some really rough conditions in St. Petersburg, Florida. So all of the Iowa State student athletes get a cost of attendance stipend each year that they would spend on food or just other extra things. He would send his stipend back home so his folks could pay the bills. That's what Anthony did with his money. His folks had not really even been to Ames to watch him play because they couldn't afford it. And so the NIL, he was one of the first people we got NIL compensation for, and Anthony used that money to fly his parents up for his senior day. And that's really one of the first times they saw him play. And that's the kind of money that we utilized. But the cool part of that story is Anthony was so touched. It wasn't that much money. I'll be honest, everybody in this room, we're talking a couple $1,000s for Anthony so he could get his folks back up to Ames. But then he was so touched, he told me after that weekend, he said, Brent, because of what the WeWo Collective has done, when I get drafted in the NFL, and there was no guarantee he was, I'm going to give back to the collective. So he gets picked by the Packers in the 6th round, made a very nice donation back to the collective on the Monday following when he got drafted.
Okay.
And that's the stories I wish would be told more of.
Sure.
Great people, and there's so many more stories like that, again, you'll hear the big numbers, but a lot of these folks are just trying to get enough dollars to get their parents to come to town and watch them play.
Right.
And that's really what it is.
And those stories like that it's not clickbait enough.
No.
Right? It doesn't draw enough attention. It's not those, this guy got paid $500,000 or the Matt Rule statement of, it's going to take $2 million to get a good quarterback, right? It just doesn't generate that kind of stuff. But what you're saying is, and I didn't know that, and there's probably 85% of the people in this room that didn't know that, because we only see and hear and know what we see and hear and know. Yeah, it's nothing like that.
Right. The problem is, though, it's getting to the point where Matt Rule is not lying.
Right.
You know, so
100%.
that's at the high end. This is what gives me headaches. Is the race keeps escalating, and I don't. It's gonna slow down at some point. I know the big question is this sustainable? No,
Yeah.
it's not. This is not. The
Okay.
current environment is not sustainable. It's not. It is not going to work in the long term. However, if you don't participate,
You're going to get
you're
left
going to
behind.
get left behind. And for the time being, I think I like to say we're in the 5th or the 6th inning of this thing. I think and again, I'm hopeful because I hope somebody steps in and says, hey, this is not working functionally for everybody. But for now, the quarterbacks making $1 million plus is 100% realistic.
Yeah.
100% realistic. So that's where we fight the battle of how do you keep in competitive nature with those other schools that, I mean, there are guys, we had a couple football players after a game had some people connected with other staffs come over and say, hey, you'd look good in our colors.
Sure.
We're going to reach out. That happened.
That's tampering, isn't it, though?
Good luck regulating it. That's the problem.
Okay.
There's nobody there to step in, and so that's what we're up against. But thanks to the support of the Cyclone Nation, the administration being on the same page, and even you guys might not realize it, but the vodka, the beer, we now have a pizza, merchandise. But I would say most importantly is just your individual donations. We're able to keep every single player on the football team into this next offseason. 20 of 22 starters will be back thanks to everyone's support. And as part of, and this is what I always echo, it's a part of the culture at Iowa State. I mean, without Coach Campbell, without Jamie, without everything else there, we don't want NIL to be the reason somebody doesn't stay. And so we're trying to do all we can just to keep the boat above water until, again, it steps in. I think somebody will step in and regulate this at some point.
So I was going to ask, but so for Iowa State, it's you're in addition to.
Yes,
you're not a because,
100%.
You're in addition to, which obviously you said culture in 2022. So obviously, for every Iowa State fan here, that makes them the going away favorite to win the Big 12 next year and make the football playoff. But we can talk about that
Yes.
later. I mean, nobody's going to clap about that?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. I mean, because we know that. I mean, can we say horns down here, or is that?
Yeah,
is that
and by the
illegal?
way,
Is
so
that-
shout out to my guy Kyle of Iowa State 1858 Vodka. Tito's is made in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
So why do we support them? Support the Iowa State 1858
Wow.
Vodka.
Wow, see, look at that. This guy knows how to raise money.
Tito's
folks.
down.
Yeah, Tito's down,
Yeah.
Tito's down, and horns down.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that. But we are. You're losing Texas, you're losing Oklahoma. But
Yeah, no.
I want to know this, Brent, because I can tell, and I think the people in here, you're passionate about what you're talking about, and you're fired up, and this is the best part. And you talk about Anthony. If Brent Blum were in charge, and he gets to make the decision on how to regulate NIL, what is Commissioner Blum doing?
Oh, well, so the one thing you have to do, and again, I think the NCAA gets a lot of blame in this when they're
As
really.
they should. I'm just
Well,
kidding. No, I'm just
actually,
kidding. I'm just
no,
kidding. I'm just kidding.
They're an easy person to pick on. And again, Jamie can speak to this. The NCAA is made up of its member institutions. So the problem is you've got now these member institutions who signed on to be part of the NCAA that are now openly fighting everything the NCAA is trying to do. So it's like, it makes it very difficult. Now, in my perfect world, I do think NIL should be around in some component. I just, our friends to the east, Caitlin Clark is the perfect example of what NIL should be about, in my opinion. Somebody who is legitimately a huge brand ambassador, a huge influencer, and she's making millions of dollars because of it, and she should.
She's a worldwide superstar.
Yeah, but I do think between the NIL situation, and it basically has turned into this weird thing of, whether we like it or not, pay for play, plus the transfer portal rules, which in December got neutered even more due to literally attorney generals for states challenging the NCAA. Like, we've kind of lost our way. Something needs to be stepped in. I'd be curious what Jamie thinks too. I don't know if it's the best way to go, but I think we will see some sort of collective bargaining situation potentially down the road, especially with football. And then, there needs to be some structure in place where there's caps, because right now, college athletics is professional sports without a salary cap or a draft.
Right.
And it's literally the highest bidder can win.
So
that's,
come here and do this, and we'll give you this, and it doesn't matter because there's no luxury tax.
It's not like Iowa State gets a compensatory pick in the Major League Baseball draft
Right.
because Texas took their quarterback or their point guard.
Right.
Not to name names. But
I digress.
that's where it's like there needs to be some structure in there. It's just what's the best way? Because there's so many hurdles that everyone again blames the NCAA, but this has now turned into a legal, a congressional. I mean, it's way above even the NCAA's regulation at this point.
And we had other questions, and I was listening to KXNO one day, and you were on, and I think, and I quote, "It's the Wild West." And it really is, and I know you're obviously more on the front lines of that with your position, but we as just the general public, we see it and we think about it, but it's out of control. I mean, if there is, and you said it best, with the transfer portal and then the money, and it says, well, I didn't play, so piss off, I'm going somewhere else, and they're going to give me $250,000 because this is what I want to do, and you can't really blame the student athlete.
Absolutely not.
I mean, you talk about guys like Anthony, and they get an opportunity like that. That's life-changing money.
100%.
And they're 18, 19-year-old kids. So we, as the adults, or you guys that are the head of the collectives and the NCAA, you're going to have to get a handle on it, because it's I don't want to say it, but it's almost like the inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah, there's something. The problem is everyone's super competitive here. And so you have some conferences who have other goals than others. And to be quite frank, the SEC has had so many advantages for so long, they could be at the forefront of making some changes, but because they make so much more money than everybody else, they're at an advantage. They may not have reason to change.
No.
And so actually, I think it's interesting when you see like a Nick Saban retire, or you see some of these longtime coaches retire.
Harbaugh leaving.
Yep. You're starting to see that some of these coaches are like this. I don't, really half my job is retaining my own roster. This is not what I got in this for.
The game's changed.
It is, again, not sustainable, but I just don't know who's going to be the one to step in outside of Congress to say, okay, we need an antitrust exemption to make sure this whole thing works. And so I think for the Iowa States of the world, we're trying to do it what I say is the right way. We're just kind of holding on for dear life until somebody steps in. And thankfully, because of the support we've had, and we always need more, okay? We've been able to be okay, but all it would take is, and unfortunately, the world I'm looking at is got through the football transfer portal so far. I'm looking now at basketball. Iowa State's got a really good basketball team.
Yeah.
Iowa State has 3+ players that have no more eligibility left. And so now the focus for us is how
we gotta go find
some post players.
Yeah.
And
So it never stops, right?
Doesn't stop.
You kind of got through the football, like, all right, we're good, take a breath, but
yeah, it just keeps going. And unfortunately, because, and then you have some schools like Creighton or Gonzaga who don't have football teams.
all their money goes to that program.
So it gives me headaches. It gives us scary because it's like you got to keep going and going and going. But at the same time, I'm very cognizant, of working at the foundation for 7 years. There is a thing as donor fatigue, and the same people getting asked over and over, even fans who are giving their hard-earned dollars, like, what is my return on this? I was like, it's hard to sometimes explain it other than because we have to right now, and that's only going to last for so long. And so, super respectful of the situation we're in. Sometimes I wonder if we're asking too much, but at the end of the day, I look at it as athletics at Iowa State is 100% the front door of the university. And a thriving athletics program means so much for not only Iowa State, but this entire area. Just think about how much more enjoyable winters are when Iowa State basketball is competitive.
Yep.
And so the way I look at it is NIL is a small section to keep things going just for the good of the university in a weird way,
right,
until this thing calms down and there's regulation where there is potentially collective bargaining or some sort of direct player compensation.
Which is wild to say. I mean, but it is real, collective bargaining, and you hear about all of them, and then you look down the road, and then do the players go on strike, and then you look at this, and they have unions, and then the conferences, and we got super conferences, and then are they just going to secede and create their own conference and get away from the NCAA? We can go down a rabbit hole. But anyway, you talked about always trying to garner more and things like that. Talk to us about the Westo and how that's kind of come about, and what you're doing there, and then what else is in the works?
Yeah, it's been so fun. And the Westo folks having Joe in the back now, they've almost become like extended family for us. It really happened super organically. So I'll just be honest, Iowa had a great idea with Exile to have their beer, and I was like, shoot, that's a really good idea. We should probably do that too. So I reached out to some of the bigger, other brewers in the state, and several told me, no, we can't get into it because of the rivalry. Like, we can't be the Iowa State place because of the Hawks, and that upset me a little bit. Like, you guys are missing out.
Fair enough.
Missing out.
Yep.
So I kind of put the bat signal on. You know, social media isn't good for many things, but sometimes putting the bat signal out to get some help, it does. So
Yep.
I put out basically a tweet saying, hey, is there any brewers that want to help Iowa State?
Sure.
We literally have a giant fan base that wants to buy some beer. And thankfully, the folks at Westo, the owner Matt's an Iowa Stater, Joe, Michaela, the whole team, it has been so cool. And they took it, we literally had a call the next day, they reached out, and it has been go time from there. They have literally bent over backwards to help us. And you guys, I can't tell you enough how awesome people they are. So Joe, thank you first of all.
Yeah.
Between that and then Kyle and the Iowa Stilling folks, again at Iowa State, what I like to say is we don't have oil tycoons or Phil Knight. We have people that like to have a good time and like to support in other ways. And so people are already drinking beers, they're already buying vodka. So if we can help their favorite team as well, and it's been so successful. But the really neat part for me with the Westo thing, and it was a fun process to be part of. The hardest part was finding a name, by the way. We had some interesting ones that got left on the cutting room table. And then the design, and working with Iowa State to make sure we didn't violate any trademarks, which is a big part of it. But the neat thing is it has a real impact, and what we've seen is it was more of a marketing thing for us than just the revenue we're getting from the beer, because I think Iowa State fans realized, hey, this NIL thing can be kind of fun and cool, and this is a way I can help, and I can feel like I'm supporting, and it almost became a galvanizing cause of, I can't give $100,000, but hey, I'll go
Right.
across the street to Fairway and get myself a six-pack and feel like I'm doing my part.
Right,
and it was the neatest thing going around the lots and just seeing people drinking Ames Lager, realizing that all of that helps. And I could get into the financials of how much it's helped. We would not have kept our football team together if it wasn't for Ames Lager and the Cyclone 1858 vodka.
Well, that's a big deal right there. Yeah, that's a huge deal. That's awesome. We got just a couple more minutes here, Brent, and then we'll take a little break. But you've touched on it already, and this is really interesting. And I know you got little ones here, but if you could stick around, and I'm sure people would want to ask you questions, because we don't know again. But it's been wild. For me, for the NAL stuff, I remember Ed O'Bannon when he played in college. And he was kind of the one that really got all of this kind of off the ground, as far as like, hey, I was on this college basketball game, and I probably didn't make lickety split in the NBA, but that was me, and this is who I am, and that's how it started. Where do you want that we will, that's two questions, I guess. Where is it, and where do you want it, or where will it go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, in our world, I'll be honest, the SEC and the Big Ten schools are at huge advantages in this space. Okay, just to kind of give you guys some numbers, the Big Ten TV contract was somewhere around $1.2 or $3 billion.
That's with a B, right?
Yeah, with a B.
Not like Austin Powers.
No.
$1 million.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
That they split up between their schools. In the Big 12, and I think Jamie probably knows the exact number, was probably half that, maybe a little less than half that. So what does that matter for NIL? Well, what a lot of schools are doing, and it's totally allowed, is let's say you were a donor to Ohio State, and you used to give $100,000 to the Ohio State Buckeye Club. Now, Ohio State can say, hey, we're getting so much from TV. I think Ohio State's budget this year was $300 million, okay? Why don't you redirect your donation over to our collective? And that's why those schools just have monster resources that it's hard for us. So I'm not even really comparing ourselves to the SEC and the Big Ten. What we need to be is competitive within the Big 12. And what I would tell you guys is, I'll just be honest with you, our first year in fundraising at We raised about $700,000. Last year we were about $2 million. This year, our staffs believe, and our board believes, that we need to get closer to $4.5 million to be competitive. And we're tracking that way. But it literally takes the beer, the vodka, your $10 donation a month, your $25 donation a month. That's where we need to get to. And again, what I would say is I don't think this thing will last forever. And so I would say like I said, we're in the 5th or the 6th inning, so we can just hold on, support We Will as you can. I think it's been fun for the fan base to rally behind something, and man, it's going to feel even sweeter when Iowa State's in the college football playoff, playing these monsters, knowing what we had to battle to get there. And so that's what I advise all of you guys is, we don't have a marketing budget. Our marketing budget goes to the players, because we need to dedicate as many resources as we can. I can't just go get, be on Channel 13 and buy an ad. So it's word of mouth, it's telling all your friends that, hey, nobody likes this, but everybody needs to participate. We have right now about 3,500 donors. About 1,000 of those are giving monthly. I would love to get that closer to 2,000, 3,000 giving monthly, because then you can project of, hey, this is what we need, this is what we have coming in. And if we can again get to a reasonable number in the Big 12, I know for a fact, Coach Campbell, Coach Otzelberger, Coach Bentley, Coach Johnson Lynch, and by the way, wrestling has their own collective. I want to share that can be supported. So you can look at that. Wrestling's got its own deal. Kevin Dresser is amazing. I would like to hire him as a fundraiser myself. But it all adds up, and I would encourage you to tell your friends that, hey, nobody loves this situation, but if we can just hang on and do what we can for now, we can ultimately help Iowa State stay competitive in the short term, which could then mean long term. Great things for this athletics department, but then also the entire university and area.
Is in tax-wise?
Yes.
If you donate, it's a donation, correct?
It is. So we've got, just to get completely in the weeds, we've got two separate organizations. We have the nonprofit, which is a 501c3, which is the We Will Collective. So that is absolutely a tax-deductible donation. We also have something called the We Will Club, which if you contribute monthly, you may get a t-shirt, a decal, and invites to events. That is technically not tax deductible because you're getting goods in return. But I'm not an accountant or a CPA.
Sure.
But yes, the We Will Collective donation, 100% tax deductible. And what we do then, just to inform everybody, in order to maintain that status, we then, instead of just compensating the players directly, we then partner them with area nonprofit and organizations, specifically youth organizations. So again, we've had probably 150 student athletes now log over 1,500 community engagement hours with 35 different nonprofits. Let's tell you a real quick story. Yeah, very good. Very good. So, a real quick story of how this thing can work, and especially in the state. So, we actually partner with the Swarm Collective in Iowa. We sent 10 Iowa State football players. They sent 10 Iowa football players to a Make-A-Wish Foundation, a charity softball game in Humboldt. And it was a who's who. They literally sold out the place. Like 7,000 people bought tickets for this thing in Humboldt. I think it was the best thing to hit Humboldt since Ryan Harklaw was there.
Yeah. Okay.
And
or Joe Reimers. Joe Reimers.
But that
shout out Joe.
That charity softball game raised close to $200,000 for Make-A-Wish Humboldt County.
Holy smokes, wow.
And they now endow a wish for a Make-A-Wish kid from that area for the rest of time. Awesome. And that's the impact that we can have trying to do good in this crazy situation. And there's so many stories like that, the impact, particularly with youth organizations. It's two-pronged for us. It helps these nonprofits. They do it for free. It doesn't cost them a dime. But then for us, the Iowa State folks who are already doing so many great community things already, get another way to impact this area, because we don't have professional sports. These are our role models. So the more we get them out in the community, and last summer we did a free football camp for the underserved population in Des Moines. 400 kids that couldn't afford a camp, but we brought the camp to them. And those are some of the neat things that we're trying to do with the generous dollars people contribute to make sure they feel good about what they're doing in more than one way.
That's awesome. Well, Brent, we're going to send you off. This is a tradition we started the very first show of the Flyby, and it's as being a former educator, and we did it because school was getting started. It was 2 truths and a lie. So you've got to give us 3 things, and 2 of them will be true, and 1 of them will be a lie, and then we'll poll the audience by show of hands, then you will tell us. But mind you, you will explain each one as to why they are true or it is a lie. So go ahead, what's the first one? 2 truths and a lie.
Okay, number 1, I have a twin brother that went to the University of Iowa.
Wow. Okay. Go ahead.
Number 2, I was born in the University of Iowa hospitals right across from Kinnick Stadium.
Wow. Jeez. Okay, keep going.
I know, I just lost the room.
Yeah, well, don't leave yet, folks. He's still got another one, but keep going.
And number 3, think about this. What's the other one? I have.
Dude, you got the questions.
I know. I got. No, I'm trying to think. I had a long list.
Okay.
I have played one-on-one with Dwight Howard.
I like this. Okay, folks, by a show of hands, He has a twin brother. Who thinks that one is the lie? Not as many as I thought. Okay. Who thinks that he was born at the University of Iowa Hospital is a lie? Okay. All right. Who thinks that he played one-on-one with Dwight Howard is a lie? Joe doesn't believe that, but we were magic guys. Oh, we got the inside track there. Uh-oh, she might have given it away. Which one is the lie?
I never played one-on-one with Dwight Howard.
Okay, you never did. All right.
For my own ego.
Okay, twin brother.
One brother that went to the University of Iowa. We grew up together, and he said, "We need to separate." I said, well, I got Iowa State. You go.
Yeah, you gotta go.
You go over there.
You go over there to Purgatory.
Yeah, you go over to Purgatory.
That's right. Yeah, you go over there to that hellhole. No, I'm just kidding. But you were both going there. I'm just kidding. No, we love Iowa City. We love the Hawks sometimes, but not tonight because it's an Iowa State night. Brent, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time and you being here. You talked about doing events and things like that.
Yeah.
The We Will Collective's got to keep Flight Bar and Grill and the Flight Lounge in mind. You see the turnout here. We turn out, we turn up, we market it. It's a great spot.
I do have to thank the flight team and Matt. So we have a fundraiser. Our biggest fundraiser is on Wednesday. We still have tickets available, by the way.
There you go. Shameless plug.
But they were far beyond gracious to donate a very nice package for us to auction off for free, no cost to us, at our fundraiser on Wednesday. So they walk the walk, they talk the talk.
Yeah, very good. Yes, very good. Before I let you go, when that's Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Do you already have an auctioneer? I know a guy.
We do.
Okay.
We do, but I'll keep
I know a guy.
Okay.
All right. I'll give you a card when we're done here. But anyway, that's my shameless plug, as some of these things go. But anyway, again, Brent, thank you for your time. Give him a big round of applause, folks. We'll take a little break here. Guys, we'll take about a 5-6 minute break, and then we'll bring Jamie up here. Get it moving. Shameless plug, I had to do it.
Yeah. Thank you. You okay with what we got?
All right, folks. Want to kind of find your seats, and we'll kind of get this show on the road here a little bit. I know some of you got to get home to your young ones, or you can stay here and hang out and drink beer. I don't care. It's up to you. It's like somebody's chomping at the bit to get behind the microphone. I like it. That's your water, Jamie. If you want it, you can drink that. Or if you need another beverage, you can bring it up. Thank you. Appreciate that down here in front. A couple things before we get started with this, with Jamie here. Some of the fun facts from Flight from 2023, they may have had these laying around in some spots, but some of these numbers are astronomical. It says the guest total for 2023 was 96,181 people, and they served over 97,227 burger patties. That's a lot of smash burgers, man. I'm telling you, that's an incredible amount. And they plated over 27,000 pounds of fries, and I think I probably had at least 20 pounds of those, probably. But we are so lucky to have Flight Bar and Grill here in town in the Flight Lounge. But with that being said, we are really lucky to have the man, the myth, the legend.
Heavy on the myth.
Heavy on the myth, that's fair. But the Iowa State Athletic Director, Mr. Jamie Pollard. Give him a big round of applause, please. Jamie, I'm going to tell you this. You're just as good looking as a person as you are on TV. I'm just telling you right now. I'm just telling you, I just got to tell you. All right. So you kind of know you've been through these interviews before. Maybe nothing like
That
this.
was a lie.
Well, oh, that was a lie? Okay. Well, all right. Well, I guess the end of the show's done. It's fine.
Material.
Okay. So, tell us about you. Is that music going off somewhere? Can we get that music turned off? Is that music going on? There's music somewhere. No, you got it, Marianne. You're great. I thought somebody's phone was going off. I'm thinking, really? This is like, it's Sunday, so this is like better than church. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Jamie, background. Tell us, man. Like, where you from? And then we'll get how you got where you're at and everything like that.
So I'm from Oshkosh, Wisconsin,
Okay.
and baby of four.
My
and
man.
By a long shot.
Hold on. How much younger are you than your siblings?
Well, I always reminded my parents I was a mistake and a pretty damn good one.
That's what I tell my parents. I'm the youngest by 8 years, and I said, well, you finally got it right.
So my siblings were all born overseas. And
Okay.
So I was maybe let's have one in America.
There you go.
So pretty darn good mistake. That's
So-
what I always told my parents.
Parents were at overseas.
So I grew up in Scotland and England.
Okay.
So, but grew up in Oshkosh. I part of it and why I love doing what I do. You know, my family knew nothing about sports. My mom couldn't have told me the difference between football and basketball. But I ran in high school and I went to college because I wanted to keep being a student athlete. And I always say we grew up on the other side of the tracks. So I was a Pell Grant recipient. I was the only one. My one sister made it out of high school, but I had siblings that didn't make it out of high school. So I was the only one that ever went to college. And so I'm proud of that when I'm around our student athletes because I'm probably the least likely of a profile of someone to be in the role I'm in.
Yeah.
So, but ended up, I was an accounting major in large part because the student athlete that hosted me, who is still one of my best friends on my visit, was an accounting major, and I thought he was a pretty cool guy, and so I thought, oh, I'll be an accounting major.
Yeah.
Didn't have any idea what I was doing. But went to work at Arthur Andersen in Milwaukee, worked there for a couple of years, and then got the idea that I went back and talked to my college coach, and I thought maybe I'd coach, but he said, maybe you ought to think about getting into administration. And so I got lucky, I got a job at St. Louis University.
Okay.
And much like a lot of people, you know, it's who you work for, and my boss got the job at the University of Maryland. And so we left and went out to the University of Maryland. I met my wife when we were in St. Louis.
Give us timeline, Jamie, like years, if you don't mind. Like what year?
2 years at Arthur Andersen, that was 1987 to 89.
Okay.
And then in St. Louis from 89 to 94. Then we went to the University of Maryland in 1994. Started to have children when we were out there. We were there from 94 to 98, and then Pat Richter called me out in Wisconsin and gave me the opportunity to, at that time, come home. It's not home anymore.
Right.
But to come home, and was at the University of Wisconsin. And then, as you know, it's who you work for and when you work for them, but the provost at Maryland when I was there was Greg Joffrey. And Greg Joffrey had become the president at Iowa State. And so Greg Joffrey called me and said, would you have interest in being the athletics director at Iowa State? And so we came here in 2005, and now it's home.
long ways away from the Billikens, right, at St. Louis.
Oh, the Billy, that's good that you
Yeah.
can pull that out of
But
the.
Charlie Spooner, was he the
Charlie
coach there?
Spooner was there when I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the brain works in weird ways here, Jamie. I'm just
He
going to
was-
let you know.
He was
So-
a great basketball coach,
Yeah.
fun person to be around.
Good guy. Okay. Wisconsin. When you were at Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez, football coach still, or was he?
Yep, so,
AD?
Pat Richter was the AD for
Okay.
my first 5 years, and then Barry became football coach AD, and I became deputy AD working for Coach
Okay.
Alvarez.
And then you talk about the president of Iowa State being at Maryland, who you know, timing, right? And
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's, we always like to think it's what you know, but I always say it's what you know when you know it, and who knows you know it.
right, absolutely. And you kids, how many kids do you have?
Four.
Four.
Thomas, who's our oldest, who's on TJ's basketball staff and got married this past summer.
Big analytics guy. Did I read something on that?
Yes, he
He's-
was
yeah.
analytics and kind of, you know, like, I think he kind of does whatever TJ needs him to do, but he's heavy
Perfect.
on analytics.
Yep.
And then my second oldest works at Blaine Children's Hospital in the NICU, and she also got married this summer, and her husband is a fourth grade teacher at Gilbert.
Okay.
And then our third went to Nebraska. And to forgive her, she said, you know, she wanted to run, she wasn't Division I at this level, but she said she wanted to go to a Big Ten football program, so I always kid her now, and I say, how'd that work out for you?
Well, you aren't wrong there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she is down in Kansas City in grad school, and then our youngest, James, is a junior at Northern Iowa and is on Coach Jacobson's staff as a manager.
Awesome. That's super cool. So, I mean, obviously, with the We Will Collective and Brent being here, you could maybe use a little of that NIL money with 2 weddings in the same year.
Now, actually, our kids, I mean, they both had really small weddings, and so if you can ever have children that want to do that, you know, my daughter had 60 people at her wedding, and Thomas wanted to outdo that, so he had 18. Now, I wish the one I had to pay for was 18. I'll take the 60, right?
Jeez,
Beggars had to pay for a wedding, we'll take 60, right?
Beggars can't be choosers, no doubt about it. That's terrific. So, the question is day in the life of Jamie Pollard, and I want to know day in the life Jamie Pollard's first year at Iowa State compared to day in the life of Jamie Pollard 2024.
That's a great way to ask the question, because it's changed drastically. I'd say today in 2024, I would describe my job as I lead leaders. And you know, that may sound like a cop-out, but if you really think about it, you know, Matt Campbell, TJ Osborne, Bill Findlay, you know, all of our staff, you know, we have a really good group of people. They know what they need to do and how to do it, but you're responsible for kind of leading it and helping set the directions. And, you know, trust me, you know, and I said this to the football staff once, and it took them a little bit to laugh, but in a staff meeting, I was saying, you know, trust me, you don't want me calling plays. And then I said, although I would go under center. Now, you all laugh and get it. They kind of look at me like, shut the, you know what.
Yeah, and you're our boss, so we can't tell you that. So,
But, you know, like, you know, Coach Campbell, like a year ago when he went through making some really tough personnel changes, you know, football coaches, you know, that's not their area of expertise. And so, you know, you can, you know, really help when you don't think you could. But, you know, I always say coaches are really good when they're all powerful of deciding who plays, who travels, who we recruit. But when it comes to making decisions about their own staff, all of a sudden they just kind of go, you know, they're not as strong in that space. And so helping them work their way through that. So, but leading leaders, if you'd asked me back in 2005, part of it was, you know, it was my first time being AD, so you don't really know what you don't know.
Right.
So you probably try to do too much yourself and you don't delegate enough. And so, you know, at this stage, you probably delegate. Maybe some of my staff think I delegate too much.
Well, I've always heard that AD stands for automatic delegator. That's what
I'll
I've
try
heard.
that.
I mean, it's not bad. It's not
But,
bad.
you know, part of it also is just the evolution of where you get with your culture and your staff.
Right.
You know, a lot of what Brent referenced was just, you know, we're very blessed in this time period with We Will and NIL that we have a football coach and a basketball coach, and really, you know, all of it. You know, we talk about volleyball, talk about women's basketball. Well, let's call it like it is. The pressure's really on the football and basketball coach, and we have two coaches that, You know, if Matt Campbell was sitting here, he would tell you, we're never going to have enough money, so why do I want to try to compete in that space? Where I can be the best is in trying to get young men that want to be developed, that want to be coached, that want to have to learn how to be a leader. That doesn't mean we still have to have some NIL presence, but we're not going to lead with that.
Right.
My biggest fear is Matt Campbell or TJ leaves, and you've got to put somebody new in that spot that doesn't understand that culture.
Sure.
And it would make Brent's life miserable, my life miserable, and a whole lot of other people's lives miserable.
And yeah, you just said culture, right? So what has, I guess, the question is the responsibility, but the culture that you've created at Iowa State. We've created. Okay, you can say we. You've been there since '05. And
you guys are part of helping create the culture.
And this is why he's as good as he is, folks, and that's, which is terrific, and I love that. But it is culture, and I've listened to Coach Campbell talk, and I haven't listened to TJ talk as much, but it is a cultural thing, and to hear you say it as the head of the athletic department, and you just said, we, how do you get there?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's one brick at a time, and I love telling the story, and it's not because I'm trying to make fun of Iowa, it's just, it happened, okay, and it was during COVID, right, and so we were the first school, and we didn't do it because we wanted to be first. And you'll understand that here in a quick second. But we were the first school in the country that came out and said the coaches were taking a pay cut and giving up their bonuses. Okay? And how that happened was, I'm by trade, I'm a CPA, okay? So I'm a little anal when it comes to numbers.
You're a bean
right?
counter, man.
And you've all heard the 80-20 rule, right? Well, ours is probably 90-10, meaning 10% of our staff makes 90% of the payroll. Okay?
Right.
And 90% of our staff make 10% of the payroll. So you could lay off people and furlough people, but if you didn't touch that 10%, you weren't going to get at 90% of your budget, right? And so it was pretty academic to me what needed to happen. And so I just sent a text out to all our head coaches. I said, we're meeting tomorrow morning at 6:30 in my office. And we just sat in my office, and I just put the chart up on the board, and I said, folks, there's only one way forward. And if we want to, COVID's going to end. At the time, nobody knew what that really meant, but COVID wasn't going to be forever. And so when you come out the other side, those that didn't lay off people, those that kept the custodians, the equipment managers, the trainers, kept all those people, we're going to have a huge advantage when it all started back up. But if you make me wipe out all those people, you're all going to be the ones that are going to pay the price because you're not going to have anybody do any of the work, right? Mm-hmm. And in that room that morning, they all agreed to give up a lot of money and give up all their bonuses. And, I went to Dr. Winterstein, and we were, they were all worried on campus because, like, if athletics is doing something the rest of the campus isn't doing it, but they let us do it, right? Our general counsel got a call the next day from the Iowa General Counsel, University of Iowa, and said, like, how did you guys do that? I mean, like, how did you do that? And he said, well, Jamie just called a meeting. Like, and all the coaches came. Well, yeah, why wouldn't they? I mean, your football and basketball coach were in the same room?
Right.
Yeah.
That's not
well,
the norm.
They have contracts and agents. And he said, well, they just all agreed to do it. And that story played itself out with so many of my peers. And so I just say that the culture, because one of the things Iowa said was, well, how did you get that done? And they said, well, we didn't get it done yesterday. We've been getting it done for a long time because you had to build that culture, and you never knew when it was going to rear its head, right? And it usually rears its head during adversity. Mm-hmm. And when we were in a real adverse time, COVID, our culture reared its head in a really positive way because it allowed us to get through it. And, we didn't lay off one person, we didn't furlough one person, we didn't attack the bottom, which a lot of people attack the bottom.
100%. And with your upbringing, you understand what all those people that you didn't lay off and you didn't furlough mean to the program.
Absolutely. I mean, those are the people that, make the thing go. I mean,
Right.
we give Coach Campbell and Coach Osborne all the credit, but the fact of the matter is it's all the people nobody knows, right?
Yep.
And I give a speech on leadership where I say, if I'm not at the football game on a Saturday, no one's going to know. Maybe the people that my family, if I don't give them my tickets. But I mean, no one's going to know I'm not there, right? But if the guy that runs the scoreboard decides, I'm not going in today, all of you are gonna write the AD. You're not gonna write the scoreboard operator, because nobody knows who that is,
That's
right?
true.
But that plays out, you know, the person that makes the French fries, the person that warms the hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And if those people don't feel appreciated and don't do what they do, then the whole thing fails.
Yeah.
But you all are a big part of that culture too, because I remember, you know, hey, when we have a coach's opening, and we haven't had one at that level in a long time, but there's no shortage of people that want to tell us who to hire, right?
Well, yeah.
Just ask Randy Peterson, okay? And, you know, and everybody usually just picks off the list of, oh, you know, because somebody's successful over there, they'll then be successful here. But, you know, I can remember interviewing some people. I mean, I go back to when we let Dan McCarney go, and there were people that we interviewed. Jim Harbaugh was one of them. And Jim Harbaugh's a great coach. There ain't any question about it. But Jim Harbaugh would short circuit in Ames, Iowa, and all of you would short circuit if he was our coach in Ames, Iowa, right? And so you can't bring somebody into the culture that doesn't resonate with all of you. So that's a big part of it.
That was the next
That's
question.
why Paul Rhodes had such great success early on here, is because, you know, people looked at him as one of you. It was like your neighbor was coaching the team, and y'all loved it. And, you know, I would say from McCarney to even Chisholm to Rhodes, all the way through to where we are today, it was like a relay race, and each person had the baton and had to do their part. Some were shorter, some were longer, but they all got us to where we are today.
So, what goes into hiring a Division I coach? What's that process look like? You haven't had to do it. You did it well, and this is TJ's.
It looks different today than it did in 2005. Because in 2005, I would have I did. You know, you thought, well, okay, I'm good at this. I can figure this out. And we'll go, you know, I'll go get one of those people off that list, right? Because you thought it was science. And what you quickly figured out, personnel is art. Personnel is 100% art. I mean, they got to be good at what they do, right? Because they get no credibility if they're not good at what they do. But just because somebody's good doesn't make them the right fit if they don't fit. And fitting at Iowa State is matching with our culture. And so what I would tell you is, yeah, you're looking for track record, but you're really wanting to know, do they know what it's going to be like to be in Ames, Iowa?
Okay, you say that. Matt Campbell
Yes.
could go down, if he isn't already, as the very best football coach ever at Iowa State, possibly. Maybe not there yet. Why him? Was it because of that reason that you just said? Because you knew that he could fit in here? Because he's had many opportunities. We all read the papers and we see all the tweets, but he's still here. And as far as I know, and from what I've seen, like I said, heard him talk and his on-the-field success. We've had some hiccups. This year was a great year. He's great. He's a big-time dude. How'd you get him? Why'd you get him?
Well, you know, we had identified him as the #1 candidate, and so I'm going to digress because it's a funny story off of that.
Okay.
But
Yep.
So we went to interview him first, and it was Thanksgiving weekend. They were playing Friday in a game they had to win to get to the MAC championship the following week. Matt was adamant he would not talk to us until he knew if that they were still playing or not. And so we flew over to Toledo and camped out in Toledo on that Friday, even though we had lined up a whole bunch of interviews for Sunday in Atlanta with a whole bunch of other candidates. But we decided if they lost on Friday, nobody else was coming in there and being first. We were going to be first.
Sure.
So he lost on that Friday and was stunned to find out we were there waiting for him, because he thought when he lost, like we probably were moving on, like we were going to go somewhere else. And we're like, no, we're just down the block. When do you want to meet? And so we met on Saturday morning, and I remember we asked him to bring Erica to the interview, his wife. And we joke about it to this day, because it was David Harris, who's now the AD at Tulane, but had been at Northern Iowa.
Yep.
So David Harris and I were the two people, and we walked in, and you do the pleasantries, and then Erica goes to leave, and I said, where are you going? And she goes, well, I'm leaving. You're going to interview Matt. I said, no, we came here to interview both of you, because we're not hiring him without you. And so she sat through the whole interview, all right? And this is a great line, because when it got down to the end, and I remember saying to him, like, okay, here's what's next, okay? you can either shake my hand and tell me you're taking the job, or you can let me go do what we normally do, which is I'll go interview a whole bunch of people tomorrow, and then we'll see where we're at. And he said, he looked at her and goes, what do you think? Okay. And she's like, I'm in.
Oh boy.
And so he reaches his hand out, and I said, well, I haven't even told you what you're going to make. And he goes, it doesn't matter, I can trust you.
Wow.
And so it was bonded right there in that moment.
You bet.
But this is the funny part of it. This is a part of never make assumptions, okay?
Yep.
Especially in the world we live in. Never make assumptions, right? So we both sat there and talked about, well, how can we tell our teams? Because in this day and age, you can't, as soon as I pick up the phone and say, call those 5 other people and tell them I'm not coming to Atlanta, everybody knows you hired somebody,
Yeah,
right?
nothing's a secret.
Yeah, so, right? And Matt wanted, because now it was almost Saturday, it was later in the day on Saturday, but Matt wanted to be able to go tell his team on Sunday. I wanted to get back to Ames and tell our locker room. And we were meeting at his financial advisor's office, and the guy said, don't worry about it, I got it handled. Now, when someone tells me they got it handled, and it's something, it's like, great, somebody's got it handled, let's go to dinner. So Matt, Erica, and I leave to go to dinner. I call Ellen, and I said, Ellen, this is awesome, Matt's taking the job, I'm coming home tonight, I'm not going to Atlanta. The Campbells are gonna fly in on Sunday, they'll come to our house, we're gonna have the press conference on Monday, it's awesome, right? She's all fired up. So we're at dinner, and my phone, I can feel it buzzing in my pocket. And at first, I don't want to be rude, it's my new coach, right? His wife, right? And it keeps buzzing and buzzing. I said, excuse me, I gotta look. I look down, and I got 3 missed calls from Ellen. So what's the first thing you'd think as a husband? Something bad happened.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I said, let me go, I just gotta go out and take this call. So I go out and I call Ellen, I said, well, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she goes, are you sure Matt Campbell's coming to Iowa State? And I said, yeah, why not? She goes, well, it just said on ESPN that he's in Columbia, Missouri right now interviewing with the University of Missouri.
Oh, get out of here.
And I remember thinking, I looked out and I go, well, no, they're just starting their tiramisu. I don't know.
I think that's his. Yeah.
He's here. So the following day, we're all at our house and his financial guy's with him. And I said, by the way, when you said you had it handled, what did that mean?
Oh, man.
And he said, oh, I called my friend at ESPN and I said, we need a favor. You need to run a story that Matt Campbell's in Columbia, Missouri, interviewing. Okay? So think about that. So I got my wife going, it's the worldwide leader. They can't be wrong.
Yeah. They know everything.
So it does make you pause about what they tell you, because you never know what that other person's agenda is. So I don't want to live my whole life being skeptical, but I've kind of said, if I don't see it with my own eyes or hear it with my own ears, I'm probably not going to be first in line.
So that's an awesome story. So Campbell was your main target, one interview, you got him.
Yes.
You went through that. It's terrific. And you can deflect this question if you want to, Jamie, because we said we were going to stay on track, but I got to know, because the hiring process is something. I don't want to say what's easier, because neither one is easier, or maybe which is harder, firing a coach or hiring a coach.
It's not even close.
Okay.
It'll always be firing. And it ought to be.
Yep.
The day it's not is the day I need to exit stage, what is it, left?
Yep, stage left. Yeah.
Stage left.
Yeah, stage left.
Because then you're not human. Especially, any sport for that matter.
Yep.
But football, the lives you're impacting when you change a coach.
Yep.
It's not just the coach and his family.
It's the whole staff.
It's
right?
the whole staff. It's all the
staff.
players, their family. You're disrupting a whole bunch of stuff. So if that's not hard, and I've always said the hardest thing I've done in my whole time at Iowa State, 19 years, was letting Paul Rhodes go. Totally.
Yeah.
He lived behind me. Paul and I still talk. We talked this weekend. He just became interim head coach at Boston College. And part of it was we're vintage. We're out of the same age. It's just we were close. His kids grew up with my kids. We ran track together. We did everything together. And the true story, that Sunday morning, he knew he was done. I knew he was done on Saturday on that airplane. But, you were dealing with it on Sunday morning.
And, so you go in, I got my staff, we've laid it all out, we're gonna do it, and so I'm supposed to call him at 10 o'clock. And I know he's over in the football building, right? He's just like across the parking lot. And I remember getting out my cell phone, and it's a speed dial, right? You just press the button. I couldn't do it. And I didn't do it till 10:24. Took me 24 minutes, I just couldn't. It was like, because I knew as soon as I pushed it,
It was over.
and he saw my name come up, it was over. He knew it was over, right? And it ought to be that hard.
I agree with you, and I can tell by the emotion. You guys are still close, and which is incredible. But that same emotion you have with Paul Rhodes and that firing, probably the same reason Matt Campbell's wife saw the look in your eyes and said, I'm in. This guy's a guy.
Well, what's really neat about Matt Campbell is this. It's been fun to watch him. I think this is going to be his 8th or 9th year. Okay, to watch just the I call it the journey, right? Because the journey at Iowa State as head football coach, only one person's ever left Iowa State with a winning record. One head football coach has left Iowa State with a winning record. So everybody in the industry knew it was a graveyard. You go there to be fired and never be head coach again. Okay? So anybody that takes that gig knows what they're up against. And so the MO is if you can have success, you bounce.
Yeah.
Right?
Go somewhere else.
And so it's been, going back to leading leaders, it's been fascinating. Even my own relationship with Matt is at a whole nother level today than it even was 4 years ago. Because I think he was going through his own internal struggle of having the outside world tell him, you need to leave.
Right.
When he knew deep down, he was in the right place. And what was the tipping point for him? And we've not ever talked specifically about it, but if he was here, I think he would probably say it because I felt it. Remember when the big story came out about it coached his daughter's softball team? That was the tipping point. Because it hit him that he could actually be a dad and a football coach, right? And so
He could be a human. He
Hey,
could be
don't
a
think I
human.
haven't pressed the buttons. Because I keep telling him, well, you wait till Rudy and Rocco play football.
Yeah.
And you get to coach them, right? But he gets to do what he gets to do, and so I say it tongue in cheek, but I mean, yeah, you can go to Notre Dame, but you aren't wearing black.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So
That's true.
when people harp on,
That's true.
okay, but when people harp on me about certain things, you pick and choose your battles, because letting somebody wear black uniforms is a hell of a lot cheaper than paying them $10 million a year to be the Iowa State football coach.
You bet.
Okay?
You bet.
And so when people equate having the ability to kind of be in charge and be in control of what they think is their destiny, that matters. And when you get somebody that understands that and appreciates that, then you pour into that, right? And that's what I think is why he's still here, is because at his core, he's a football coach that likes taking young men and turning them into, great leaders. And he gets to do that at Iowa State. He doesn't have some donor over his shoulder telling him that, well, he can't do that, or he better go do this, or he better do that. He doesn't have to do that at Iowa State.
Awesome. Switching gears. NCAA Tournament Committee. You on it? You were?
Last year.
Last
This
year.
is my last year, 5 years.
This is your last year.
Five
Coming
years.
up here.
It's a long time to do anything. 5 years.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it, for sure.
No, but it's been, I'm looking at Brent because Brent is really into this stuff, but it's been an awesome experience. It's a lot more work than I ever could imagine. It's so much more than selecting teams, which
Right.
I never knew.
So,
But it's also been, I've learned so much, and we've been able to apply it, especially in men's basketball. And those of you that have said, oh, we didn't play anybody in the beginning of the year. Okay, we are playing the playbook right now like nobody other.
some insider trading you got, kind of.
Kind of. But you know what? You know who I learned it from?
Tell me.
University of Houston, because I'm on the committee,
Well, yeah.
and I'm looking at the University of Houston's resume, and they were like 1 or 2 in all the metrics, but they had no what they call Q1 games, top flight games, because they were in the American Conference.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it going, well, how? And so then you go back and you study and you do all the analytics, and what you figure out is, yeah, people say, oh, you got to have a strength of schedule.
Well, strength of schedule doesn't matter if you A, lose those games, or B, only win them by a little. You can play the Sisters of the Poor, but you better show up. And if you show up and play defense and blow them out and are really efficient, your efficiency metrics go off the charts.
Yeah.
So if you go back and look at what we did this year, we win 92-37, we win 80. Now what TJ would say, it's a badge of honor because my guys show up and play the same regardless of who we're playing, okay? Most teams don't do that. When they're playing somebody really poor, they kind of, take that week off.
Right.
And then you don't get that bump.
Yeah.
And so we played it because you knew when you got to the Big 12, look at last night's game. It's a grind. If you can get through the Big 12 schedule 9-9, if you can get 9-9, and that's huge, then you don't want to have blown it in non-conference. So we went 11-2, so if we can get 9-9, we'll be 20-11. We'll be a 6 seed, 7 seed.
Right.
And so you just, and I'm looking at what some other schools have done, and they're like, they have no chance of getting in. I spent today, my Sundays, I spent about 6 hours where I rank them from the top 80 teams because I have to be ready to talk about it with the committee.
Yeah.
And I look at these teams that aren't getting in. They're not going to get. I know they're not getting in.
Can you tell us who?
No.
And we can,
Because
it's worth a shot.
they screwed it up. There's nothing they can do right now other than win every single one of their last games, which they're not going to do.
Right.
And because they screwed it up by either scheduling too hard for the team they had,
See Michigan State, and it's not a knock, but that's Michigan State.
or they take days off when they don't play good teams.
Right. And I think it's fair to say, I don't know if this is true, you're on the committee and you can comment on this or not, but obviously if K-State gets in there, 16 seed. That goes without saying. Is that too soon, or? I don't know. I think they're on. It's called Karma. I feel like that's a Taylor Swift song, right? That's a Karma. That's K-State. Right? Anyway, I digress. But I told you we wouldn't get off track, and I could tell by he's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. So, which is fair. You've already heard enough about it, but I want to touch on. So the March Madness thing. That's the March Madness committee.
Oh, yeah.
You won't do it again, will you? Or can you do it again if you would want to?
No, you can't. we just had the AD at Arizona got fired, and so somebody has to replace him for 6 months. So the Pac-2, because he's a Pac-12 representative, they only had 2 choices, and both of them had been on the committee before. So the person got to come back on for 6 months, but technically you don't serve.
Okay.
When you're done with your 5 years, you're done.
Cool. I'm going to go on to talk about Sci-Town and the idea, how it came about. Start there.
So Sci-Town at its raw, at the very basic, is a new solution for an old problem. Okay? And the old problem is Dr. Hilton was an unbelievable visionary, and how he ever got Sheeman, Stevens, Fisher, and Hilton built in the swamp 60 years ago is mind-boggling. Because I'm knowing how hard it is for us right now, and I can't only imagine back then. Because when he was doing it back then, nobody had any of that stuff, right? Who's been to Des Moines to the Civic Center to go see Hamilton or whatever, right? Okay, Jeff, who runs that place, was a student worker at Iowa State, at Sheeman, at the Iowa State Center, before Des Moines had ever even thought of building a civic center. That's how far ahead Ames, Iowa was, okay? And so, unfortunately, not unlike most state schools, we're really good at building stuff, but we're really crappy at maintaining stuff. And part of that is the funding model, right? You go get donors to help you build shiny things, and it's really hard to get people to give you money to put in new plumbing, okay? And so here we find ourselves 60 years later where those facilities are either obsolete or in various bad forms of disrepair.
Sure.
Sheeman's a great building. It was a conference center 60 years ago when it was not open space but little rooms. And
They got a deal on concrete forms 60 years ago.
I bet.
They put it everywhere. Okay. Now I joke and say, anybody here in the trades, like building things? Builders, yeah. Okay, there's load-bearing walls and there's load-bearing walls. And Sheeman's got load-bearing walls. You're not moving walls. I mean, those are concrete. If we ever get bombed, you can get in line behind me. Okay, because I'm hanging out.
Okay.
But, so the university just didn't have a solution. And Dr. Winterstein became president, and athletics, we were at a point in time where we're trying to figure out how to generate more money, kind of running out of ticket options, but people love where they park, right? And so we didn't have control of the parking lots, other than the two, one north of Hilton and one south of Hilton. And we had redone those, and it created more space and generated more money. So I went to Dr. Winterstein and said, athletics wants to take over all the parking. And she said, that's a great idea, but they come with the buildings. Now that was a joke, guys, but that's what she said. So it meant we had to take on all those buildings. And so I remember when I came back to the athletics department and told our staff, I got good news and good news.
Right.
The good news is we got the parking lots. And they're like, yeah, it's awesome. And I said, then they come with the buildings. And they're like, what, are you an idiot? We know nothing about that. And I said, you're right, but we do know how to run buildings. I don't really care it's not us that'll decide what plays or what musicals. That's why we have an outside management company. But we do get buildings. And so that's where Cytown was born. Because then we started going, okay, now we got parking lots. So what do we want to do with parking lots? Well, what else can we do besides park for football games and the basketball games? And that one thing led to the next, and now here we are. We're about 2/3 of the way done with the infrastructure, so by the end of August, we're gonna have some really nice parking lots everywhere that are elevated out of the floodplain. And as I told Dr. Winterstein, if we never build a building on top of them, somebody someday will say, whose great idea was to put all that infrastructure underneath? Because now it's all there in case you want to build, but we are gonna build.
You're gonna build. Okay.
So we are McFarland.
There you go, dude.
So the parking lots, all the infrastructure will be done by August. McFarland Clinic, they're building a Taj Mahal. I mean, it's gone from 50,000 square feet to 75,000 square feet. They're gonna have urgent care, peds, orthopedics, family practice, mental health, 1,100 appointments a day that they will run through that building. 3 stories, and that's awesome for the complex because it's 1,100 more people coming that need a coffee or a restaurant or a Ames Lager.
Yeah.
Right, Joe?
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
We're gonna get West over there eventually.
That's right.
And then, we're in the middle of what they call an RFI process, which is we solicited developers to come in and talk to us about, what they would do if they took portions of this. And so we hopefully will be wrapping that up here by the end of the month. And then have a developer on board, have them start working on the rest of the vertical. And then we're also trying to raise the money for what we believe is another great asset, which would be an outdoor amphitheater on the north end, kind of like the Power Lake District.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you, what does that look like game days, like Saturdays?
During, you mean when it's all built?
When it's all built.
It'd be wild. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, okay. That's what we want to hear. Like, that's what it's going to be.
And on non-game days, it'll be.
Well, right.
That's the idea, is you want it to be something that's more than 7 days a year. You want it to be, 7 days a week.
Sure.
So, so a lot will depend what's in their space,
Mhm.
but it'll be a combination of retail, housing, office, hotel,
Okay.
amphitheater, hopefully.
Yep. And you know this, being in the position you are. With great ideas or accomplishments comes great criticism.
Uh-huh.
And and you get it. And so how do you tamper that? How do you kind of you can't listen to it all the time, right? But I mean, it's there. And
So
you
I've
hear
always
it.
said this, like people will say, well, you just gotta tune it out. I'm going, you've never walked in these shoes.
Right.
If you cut me, I will bleed. If you punch me, I will bruise. If you insult me, I will hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
And they'd say, well, don't listen to talk radio. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a sports fan too, so I like listening to it.
Sure.
And I get mad at it and shut it off.
Sure.
But it just comes with the territory. But what you have to always remind yourself is, we also prey on that fanatic, right?
Yeah.
By ticket prices, donations, you know. So you can't only like it when it's good and then bitch about it when it's bad. So you just got to kind of find your way through it. But there are days, trust me, there are days, you know. But what I would tell you is this. You know, the message boards, the chat rooms, all of that stuff, go to it for entertainment, don't go to it for fact. Okay?
Very good.
Go to it for entertainment, but don't go to it for fact.
Okay.
Go back to my assumptions thing, right?
Very well said. Yeah. Yeah. Assumptions. That's Jack Reacher. Anybody watch Jack Reacher? Assumptions can kill during an investigation. I feel like that's. You watch Jack Reacher in Prime? You probably don't have time. You're too busy kicking teams out of the NCAA tournament. Anyway.
I believe you did that.
Well, they didn't kick him out. I said they could be in at a 16. But anyway, portal, NIL, transfer portal. How has that impacted you? Obviously, in the last 3 years, is it a headache? Is it a pain in the ass? Is it both? Is it, oh, this is great? Or is it, oh my goodness,
Well,
now
I
what?
mean, it's clearly impacted our industry.
Yep.
And impacted our industry, I think, in a negative way, in totality. I would contest it really hasn't hurt Iowa State. I could actually make the argument for it's helped Iowa State, okay? We'd be very disingenuous to sit up here and say it hasn't helped our men's basketball team in the last 3 years. You know, we got 2 guards right now on that team that are carrying us right now, Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert, that we both got through transfers, right?
Yep.
And probably less in football, but you know, basketball, there's the ability to have a much greater impact. And go back to last year, Jaron Holmes. I mean, we don't do what we do in basketball last year if Jaron Holmes didn't come here, and Ashun. So, but part of that goes back to having coaches that have been here, and I touched on that a little while ago. You know, having consistency and continuity allows us to be able to do some things that, yeah, I'm not saying nobody ever has transferred out of Iowa State, because they have, and we have had kids transfer in, but as a percentage, we're not on that end of the spectrum. We're on, you know, we just don't see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is if you're giving them a great experience, you know, then they shouldn't want to transfer. Now, sometimes they'll transfer because they just want to play, and they know they're not going to play where they're at, and I totally get that. Totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like it because I think it reinforces values that aren't conducive to what real world's going to be like. You just can't quit every time and switch. Okay, it's not a video game where you can just shut it off and restart it.
Yep.
But then again, I don't want to be a hypocrite because coaches can leave and go, so why can't a student athlete leave and go?
Yeah.
So I've always viewed it that way. Like, look at it like how you would do it if it was your son or daughter. And, you know, now I think as a parent, I probably would tell my son or daughter to give it a longer runway and to really try to work through it. But not everybody gets that same kind of parenting at home either.
Right.
So I get it. And then add in money, and, you know, quite frankly, a lot of the kids that are chasing the money wouldn't even be chasing it if there weren't seedy characters that are in the middle of it. So now you have, I wouldn't even call them agents, you have brokers that are scouring all our rosters to find kids that you can, they don't even care where you're going to go. They just want you to go because they know there's fools at other schools that'll just pay money to get somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in Brent's world, I mean, I don't want to say this is the case at Iowa State because I haven't studied it, but I know from all the national data, in the collective world, probably 20% of it is true NIL deals, meaning like what you see Caitlin Clark having,
Mm-hmm.
and the other 80% is all of you giving us money because you want to win.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And it's not related to their NIL ability, it's related to our having to do something to stay competitive. Now, we at least try to tie it back to making them do some charity work, which is, I think, a good educational component, but that's not happening at most places. It's totally quid pro quo. And that part, on top of the transfer, has been toxic because you got people in there that are getting their 10 or 15 or 20% of what you're giving just to get a kid to transfer, and they don't even care where the kid goes. Just go,
Right, just leave and.
which is just sad.
Yep, yeah, it's, and hopefully it changes, and then when we talk to Brent and there's something in sight, and I don't know what it is, I don't have the answers. Do you have the answer? What do you do? What does Jamie Pollard want to see done with NIL, transfer portal, and all this stuff?
Well, personally, because we're at a school that, we haven't had an abundancy of it, I'm kind of indifferent to it. I worry about what I can control. And what I can control is who coaches our teams and what's the culture we have, and we try to make the best of it. And hopefully young men, young women don't want to leave Iowa State because they're having such a great experience. And if they're not, then we need to find out why they're not. And if they're leaving because of playing time, I get it. But if they're leaving because somebody's not treating them well, or they've got some other issues going on, then we got to try to figure out if that's something we can correct. And if it's not, then so be it. The other side of it is, our industry is under siege by lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And you guys aren't going to know this, but there's 2 huge lawsuits that the court dates already are set. One's December of 24, one's January 25. Hubbard and House. Go Google them. Okay? I'm just telling you, the next year, college athletics is changing in a way that nobody in this room could have ever imagined.
What
And
you
it's
can't
not
tell
gonna-
us that.
Well, no,
Give us more.
it's going to change. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be coming out the other side, but it's going to be radically different because the system has spoken loud and clear and went to the Supreme Court. The money goes to the student athletes, and the lawyers are going to make sure that they bring us down doing that process. And the media has bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. And so those 2 cases are going to get settled either by settling, which, they want 25% of all the revenue to go to the student athletes, okay? Or we're going to go to court. If we go to court and lose, it's tribal damages. And the damages right now are $3 billion. So if it's tribal, it's $9 billion, that won't happen because the institutions would go out of business. But that's coming. And so when that hits, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be permissive because, hey, at Iowa State, there's no more money. So they can say you can give 20% of the revenue to the student athletes. The only way we're giving 20% of the revenue to the student athletes is if we cut 20% of the costs. Because there's not 20% more revenue coming. We have a $100 million budget, so there's not going to be a $120 million budget. The only way the student athletes could get the 20 would be if we spend 80 instead of 100. Well, most of our stuff's tied up in coaches' salaries, bond payments for facilities. So what's going to end up happening is, number one, not everybody's going to be able to do the 20%. Okay? Iowa State will be one of them. And so you're going to get further stratification amongst those that can versus those that can't. And number 2 is schools are going to start saying, it won't happen overnight, it'll happen slowly, but where it will eventually end up is sports other than football and basketball will become club sports. That's what's going to end up happening. If you had a crystal ball and said 10 years from now, that's what's going to happen. Because the football and basketball players aren't, if we start paying that money, that 20%, we got to pay it in accordance with Title IX. So at Iowa State, I got to pay my football players, I got to pay my basketball players because they pay the bills. So that's 85 football players, and that's 15 basketball players. That's 100. I got to pay 100 females. If I could pay, okay, if I could pay. So there's no room to pay the wrestlers. There's no room to pay the men's track team. I can pay the women's track team. If we had a baseball team, this is playing out at every school. It's not just Iowa State.
Right.
But you're going to pay the softball players, but you're not going to pay the baseball players. Okay? Or you're going to pay the football players and basketball players less, so you can pay everybody else more, and you're just going to end up in another lawsuit with another class action suit of the next generation of football and basketball players. So it's a train wreck. You can see it coming, and quite frankly, we walked into it. Coaches make way too much money.
Yeah.
Flat out, way too much money. And they, and it's a zero. I mean, think about this. Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC.
This is a great exercise, okay? I got,
Okay, all right, we're in.
okay?
We're in.
I got any math majors here? Raise your hand if you're a math teacher here. Okay. All right.
Does anybody work with numbers here? Like, Canada.
Your son raised his hand.
Yeah.
Brent. I can't see if that's Theo or
Did anybody graduate high school here? Okay, continue.
So on every given Saturday, what happens? One team wins and one team loses. So the SEC is going to have 18 teams. Okay? You can't pick.
That was right on cue.
Okay? You can't pick Vanderbilt twice. Tell me the 9 teams that are going to lose in the SEC. It's a great exercise. Okay? You can't pick Vanderbilt more than once, and you start getting to some teams on that list that you're going, holy cats! But it's mathematical. Half of them have to lose. Okay, but guess what? All 18 are doing guaranteed contracts. You know, A&M, $75 million that they had to pay off.
Yeah, Jimbo.
Right? Jimbo Fisher.
Living the good life.
So you've created a model that just mathematically can't work. So this whole notion that all these schools, that consolidation and they're all going to get in the big conference, those donors in those conferences, they're going to hang your dog and cat if you lose in your front yard. Okay? They are.
Well, it's the South.
And that's if they don't.
That's besides the point.
So, hey, I'm going to go back to the culture at Iowa State. You guys are friendly when we're losing. And it's bad. Okay? And it's bad. So I can only imagine what it's like to be the AD at one of those schools when you're losing, right? But 9 of them have to lose. And so they're going to be demanding they fire those coaches. And so, that $75 million payoff is not going to be the last.
Right.
It's just the way it is. So we've created, and so every time we have one of those, the lawyers just laugh and go, I'm going to win every time in front of the judge. Don't tell me you can't pay these kids, right? Well, the problem is no one's talking to Iowa State or talking to Drake or talking to you and I or talking to, so that's what we're up against. So there'll be some schools that'll be able to pay it, but most schools aren't going to be able to pay it. And so then what ends up happening, right? It'll all work itself out. It just is going to be a painful process to get there. If you follow along in sports, I've jokingly said this with my peers, Oregon State and Washington State. Now, you guys know what I'm referring to. They got left behind, right?
Yeah.
They're the lucky ones.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it got done to them. Nobody in a room like this at Oregon State or Washington State is mad at me. They're mad at the industry, but they're not mad at me because it got done to us. We got left behind. So we all know we don't have the television money anymore. So we're going to have to get smaller. We're going to have to pay less. We're not going to travel across the country. But it'll be fine. 10 years from now, guess what? Boise State, Wyoming, you name it. They have homecomings. They have full state. They have fun. North Dakota State's a great example. Don't tell me they're not having fun at North Dakota State in football, right?
Yeah.
But to get to that spot is going to cost people their jobs, whatever, right? The rest of us are the fools because it didn't get done to us. We're going to have to do it to ourselves. So the day I stand up and say, we got to get rid of this sport, that sport, that sport, you guys are going to say, no, we're going to get rid of you, okay? So there's going to be a day of reckoning. It's like 2008, the bubble bust. And we did it to ourselves.
I'm going to tell you right now, that question wasn't on the list, but I don't know why in the hell I asked it. It's like doom and gloom right now.
No.
I'm super nervous about college sports and where it's going.
No. I'm meeting tomorrow.
Talk me off the ledge.
Okay. I'm meeting tomorrow morning with tomorrow at lunch, brown bag lunch with all our coaches, and then I'm doing it on Thursday with all our staff, with all the administrative staff. And it isn't doom and gloom. It's like COVID, okay?
Oh, that's a great example. Jeez, just pile it on, why don't you?
Well, what has Iowa State done since COVID?
Been great.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. That's because you're sitting here, by the way. Continue on.
And we will be great coming out of this
because we're gonna just deal with it with our culture head on, talk about it, and not have our head up or buried in the sand.
Sure.
You know, just came from Big 12 meetings and they're like, you're gonna do that? Oh, I don't know if I could do that. I'm like, well, don't do it. Because we're gonna get a head start on you.
Yeah.
And our coaches, they won't like it, but hey, it's coming, so let's get prepared. You know, Matt Campbell, this isn't gonna faze him at all. It's not gonna faze him at all because he saw this train coming 3 years ago. That's why he's in the position. TJ Otzelberg has had his best recruiting classes in the last 3 years in the midst of all this crap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Why? Because he embraced it. Look at Kim Mulkey down at LSU right now. The best team money could buy in basketball, and they are struggling for they're still 10th in the country, but they're struggling, okay? Because they've got a whole bunch of pampered, overpaid kids that all think they should be the star and have the ball in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I checked, only one person can shoot the ball at a time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, thanks. I feel much better now, Jamie. Thank you. I think everybody else in the audience does too, but you kind of touched on it a little bit, but with what you were saying, like the conference realignment stuff, and you just talked about Oregon State and Washington State, and Big 12's got some good schools coming in. What does that look like in 10 years?
That's, I don't know, 10 years.
Okay.
I'm worried about
Right, next year. Right, yeah, next year.
I mean, the Big 12 is in a good spot, but, we're all as an industry, the Big 10 and the SEC, as Brent mentioned, they have more money.
Yeah.
They have a television deal that's just better than the rest of us, so they've got more flexibility, they can do some things, but, it's just, we've got to find our way through all of this, and the next year to 2 years is going to be immense pressure and change in college athletics.
Okay.
And it'll come out okay. If college athletics is too important and too a big part of the United States fabric. It's such a big part of the USOPC. I'm on the USOPC College Olympic Committee, and we talk about this all the time. 80% of all the medals earned at the last Olympics were earned by athletes that competed at a U.S. college. Okay, and so the USOPC has a vested interest in wrestling and track and field and swimming and gymnastics not going away. Okay, and that's why I say there is a solution. It's not a clear solution today, and it's probably not a solution anybody in this room would draw up if I made you come up with an idea tonight. But there'll be a solution. We just gotta, it might be painful finding the solution, but we will find it because it's just too important to this country.
Agreed. 100%, and I hope you're right.
And to our fan base.
Right, and I was going to say the fan base, I think that's probably the thing for the average fan, the fan that goes up and tailgates in the fall and goes to Hilton or goes to Iowa City or whatever, or tunes in and watches the 4 screens on YouTube TV now all the time. It's in the fabric, but where is it going? And it's such big business, and it's become such big business, and I think more people are aware of it now. And that's scary, I think, to a lot of us as fans, because just like you said, we don't know where it's going to go, and you're not sure where it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a solution. I don't know what the pathway is, and anybody says they know what the pathway is just shooting off hot air.
Okay.
What I know is, there's 2 court cases, and we can't change that, and we've lost every court case in front of that judge, Judge Wilkins, California Circuit 9.
Well, can we get him thrown out?
And
I watch a lot of law shows. Can we get him off this case?
it's a she.
It's a she, sorry. That shows you how much I know.
She is retired in 2 years, so
We've
tried to keep it extended, but we're out of extension. So the date is set. One is December and one is January. So
how involved are you guys with that?
I guess we're taking questions from the audience. Give that guy another cider. Go ahead. It's a great question. No, thanks, Pat. It's a good question.
through the conference offices, we are very involved. You know, so I just, again, I was in Dallas on Thursday and Friday, and that was probably half of our meetings. So Dr. Winterstein and I were there, the presidents and the ADs, and, you know, that was probably half our meetings getting updated from legal counsel.
Oh, is that, yeah, and you can be as honest, is that kind of scary? Like, because you're there, or is
It's
kind
not
of
scary, it's
annoying? Is it annoying?
Annoying might be a good word.
Okay.
It's disappointing is probably a better word. You know, I'm 58 and 19th year in being AD. You know, I've got less years left than more. It's not how I envisioned the less years to, you know, to be faced with.
Okay. How many years left, Jamie?
There's a better chance I'll tell you about K-State than I'll tell you
That's fair. That's a fair trade. That's a fair trade. I think we'll take that. I think we will take that right now. That's for after off the mic, off the air, off the record. Anyway, continue on.
So it's disappointing we're in this spot, right?
Yep.
Because, you know, I would rather be spending my time on a lot of more valuable
100%.
issues in our industry than that. But it is what it is, and we got to figure it out, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. This isn't on the questions, but I know that you kind of went, I don't know how long ago it was now, but health scare for you, right? Personally? A little bit of a health scare? How long ago was that?
Which one?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Well,
I keep telling the doctors I'm going through the alphabet. So 2015 is when I had open heart surgery.
Yeah.
2021 is when I had cancer. So my joke is people used to always say when I came here, like, well, or, you know, you're going to leave. And so I now jokingly say, well, I tried to leave once, but God said, we aren't taking you yet.
you're right. Right.
You're staying down there.
Uh-huh. So, scariest day as Iowa State athletic director. What was that day? Was there scariest day as the Iowa State athletic director?
I don't know if I got it good. That wasn't on the list.
I know. I told you. This is just kind of a little navigational beacon, but we're gonna drive. We're just gonna do our own thing. Is there one?
I don't know if I can say scariest day because I mean I can think about my own health issues, but I don't know if that's an Iowa State day. I don't know. I'm at a loss on that one. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. I stumped you. That's good. I like that. That means we're asking tough questions. So we're getting towards the end. We're getting towards the end here, and so we've got the most important is the 2 truths and a lie. This was on the list, by the way.
I know.
Okay. No, I don't want you to.
You didn't. I mean, all you said on the questions was two truths and a lie. I didn't know it was going to be like stump the audience.
Well.
All right.
Well, that's okay. Go ahead. You know how this works.
Jamie Pollard has had the Foundation Burger.
Close though. That was close.
It's true.
Okay.
Number 2.
Number 2.
Jamie Pollard was the very first guest ever on Brent Blum and Chris Williams' radio show.
Good one.
And number 3, a student sitting 5 rows behind the Kansas State bench successfully
He's doing it.
videoed.
He's doing it. Hold on. He's doing it.
Successfully videoed something that was done in the huddle and magically texted that to one of the young men under the basketball goal that wipe up the sweat on the floor. And one of those young men
I can't write this off.
magically found a way to get that information to our players and to our coaches in time for TJ to change what he was going to do during the same timeout. Wow.
took away my thunder as the vote. So,
Number one.
well, I guess, folks, we got to go through with it. So he has had the foundation burger. Who thinks that's the lie?
Come on, I need my owners in the back. The Pollard is here. Yeah, I had it.
That's the truth. Okay.
I ordered it. I had onion rings too.
He was the first ever guest on the Blum and Williams.
One person in this room can verify that.
Okay, that is the truth.
Sunday morning on KASI. I was the first guest like 10:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Right before
There you go. And obviously, the third one, you can take that for what it's worth. We believe that is the lie. We believe that is the lie.
Now, wait, can I add another truth?
Absolutely.
So the other truth was the team and coach that accused us of that has lost their last 4 straight games.
There it is. Well, folks, give me anything else. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about now?
How about a big shout out for Tim?
Hey, there's one thing I want to touch on. You said you're on the march, you're on the committee, the tournament committee, you're on the USOPC committee.
When do I ever work?
No, because that's work, and then you were just at Big 12. And man, we said it before you came on, and we appreciate it, Brent, but for you to take the time out of that schedule and be here with us people, because believe it or not, this is a really big deal to us. And you talked about culture in kind of where you're from and who you are. That's us. And that's why we're here, because we believe in that culture. And you took time out of your schedule to be here with us. And we cannot tell you, I especially cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. And we sure as hell hope the Cyclones run through the rest of the Big 12 this year in basketball, women's and men.
And wrestling.
And wrestling. But you, sir, have been nothing but a treat and a joy to be here tonight. So, again, round of applause for Jamie Pollard. And we did have another write-in question from the guy in front. He was wondering what it would take to be on the Big 12 officials committee review board. Is that like a write-in thing, or you just gotta show up
Well,
and be blind in both eyes? I'm just kidding.
So my basketball staff told me last night, this is a true story, that, well, number one, I'm going to say a couple things. So they did get beer thrown on them leaving the court, okay? So...
Baylor won. I thought Baylor just drank Dr. Pepper.
So those of you that say, why don't we serve beer throughout the stadium and throughout, that's one of the great things.
I avoided that question, Jamie, on purpose.
Back to your officials question. They said, the Baylor student, when the officials gave this, we got 6 technical fouls in 12 seconds. 6 free throws.
6 free throws, yeah.
The Baylor student section started chanting Jamie Pollard. And the reason they were doing it, they said, is because we honor John Higgins. And so they thought that they were smart enough to figure out, like, they honor John Higgins, and the next game we get.
Those Baylor kids are smart. That's a conspiracy if I've ever heard of one.
So I say that in light of being on the advisory.
Yeah.
For all the Cyclone fans are like, why are you honoring John Higgins? Besides, he's a really good guy and he worked 75 games in Hilton Coliseum. And if you asked any basketball coach or AD, if you could pick 3 officials to work one game that you had to win, you're taking John Higgins. Not because he always got every call right, because nobody does. But you could guarantee you wouldn't have, pardon me, cover up your kids' ears, but you wouldn't have a shit show like you had last night.
Yeah.
Because you would never let the game get out of control, right? But more importantly, the number of officials we heard from that said, that was really cool that you guys did that and that you gave us a standing ovation. So don't think for a second that that stuff doesn't matter.
I feel like when you said that comment, you should have been at the Ballard game on Friday. Again, folks, that'll do it for us. So we've gone a little longer. It's been our longest show, but it's been our biggest show and probably our best so far. So for all of you that came out, just a couple of things. We will not be doing one in March. It kind of interferes with conference tournament, basketball stuff, spring break, but we will be back here in April. And if you've got any recommendations, we're kind of open looking for suggestions. You can put it on Facebook. You can, we'll figure it out maybe. But we're trying to figure out what we're going to do for the April show. But without you guys, like I said, we started with 33 people and we've got 74, 75 attendance. And it's Huxley is a great community. The Ballard community is a great place to be. It's a great place to live. And for those of you that are raising kids, but Flight Bar and Grill, again, give Matt and Marianne a huge round of applause for making this happen. And shout out to Iowa Distillery and Wesco. Those guys will be sticking around. We're not closing the doors yet. We're sticking around a little bit. And I know Janie's got to go. We're sticking around, but enjoy some more libations. And I'll try to stop by and say thank you. But again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thanks to Jamie and Mr. Brent Blum and the family. Round of applause for those folks. Thanks again, guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. You know what? I don't know. Actually,